Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Jenkins. I'm down here in Tampa, Florida. I'm with Steel Camel, and we are pleased to have Warren van Dongen from Eco Fuel Services with us today. And we're going to talk about the wonderful world of testing diesel fuel and finding out what's going on in our diesel tank so we could avoid problems. And I have a saying down here, pay to prevent problems or pay to fix problems. And both of us, Warren and I, are both in the business, so we're just going to talk today about solving problems. Warren, tell me real briefly what you do again.
So Eco Fuel Services, we're both a fuel maintenance contractor. We do fuel maintenance for data centers and hospitals, a few private boats on occasion. And then we also do service work for fuel management and fleet fueling systems.
Awesome. Okay. And you see your share of diesel problems out there, right?
Every day.
Gotcha. And Steel Camel is basically in the preventive maintenance business, a little remediation, but we basically block water, remove water, tackle water, do everything we do to make the fuel better and the tanks from leaking. We do a lot of leak prevention. So we do some gas stations, a lot of heavy equipment, getting into the generator market. But we're going to talk about water and diesel and why you should test for it. Okay, here we go. So why test? Why should you pay attention to water? Well, I got a good 6 reasons. 1 is corrosion. Okay, 2 is pumps wear, injectors wear. 3, tank cleaning. A lot of people in this industry pay for tank cleaning. Warren and I are both involved in tank cleaning, but we want to help you avoid tank cleaning if we can. We want to improve fuel quality. Warren, really quick, can you tell me what customers really care about fuel quality?
So fuel quality for my customers, because we're talking mainly long-term storage of emergency fuel, hospitals, data centers. It is about preserving the uptime of their equipment, keeping the fuel ready to go, which means keeping the water out, which once you keep the water out, you reduce a lot of particulate caused by corrosion and microbial growth and accumulation. So we're looking to keep the fuel clean in storage for long-term use. You get to a boat customer, we're talking people who have usually been out on the lake, out sailing, out powerboating, get some rough water, get that rough seas mixing the water in the fuel tank, and gets picked up and plugs their filters and leaves them stranded out in the lake, and that's a safety concern. I mean, it's dangerous when you're out unpowered. So
yes, I sell to a guy who delivers sailboats to the Bahamas, and he's afraid he's gonna get stranded and float into the Bermuda Triangle, by the way. So anyway, we're really into that. And those of us in the gas station market, we want there's rules about how much water you could have in your fuel. It's called NIST130. And there's also rules for leak prevention, 40 CFR 280 for those of you in the gas station industry. Okay, so we got that down. So we're going to talk today about how we test fuel, but also where to look for the fuel and where do we look for the fuel problems with the water. So we got dispenser filters, obviously we got fuel tanks, a lot of problems in the gas station market with electronics, alarms, and probes. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, one of my favorite subjects, sumps and spill buckets, because that's a very good entry point for water. We'll talk a little bit about delivery drivers, and we're just going to review some do-it-yourself test methods. Here we go. Okay, so how did we get here, Warren? Why is there so much water today than there was 25 years ago? Well, I have a really kind of a cool slide that I made up. And basically, it started in California, Denver, Portland, Maine, a little bit of state of Washington, anywhere there's mountains. We had smog. We had bad smog in California. I grew up with smog, and we had to clean it up. So they had to change some of the diesel rules and reduce the sulfur. And that was in 2006. The other problem we had was we were depending on oil from hostile countries like we are today. And as you know, we have inflation and all these kinds of things. I'm trying to stay away from politics, but we wanted to reduce the amount of oil we were spending from hostile nations. In 2007, they passed the Energy Independence and Security Act. And you can see down below here that, 30 or 40 Republicans actually voted on it. So it is a bipartisan bill. And it brought about changes in diesel fuel. So we have go ahead, Warren.
One of the big issues with going to domestic, mostly domestic production and limiting our overseas production is we no longer have the residence time for the fuels and the petroleum to settle the water out. So our domestic production now is like everything else is on time. So the fuel goes from the distillation process right into the pipeline, right out to the tanks for distribution. And we don't have big settling reserves of fuel where the water used to settle to the bottom of the tank. So we're just bringing water right along with us that used to be captured during the storage process.
And that's why a lot of gas stations, you hear about when they get a delivery, it's all stirred up. You heard that before, Warren?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And they tell you to avoid the gas station when you get a big delivery, particularly if the tank is low.
The test facilities that I used to install, we always put diffusers on the tank fills to help reduce stirring of the bottom of the tanks.
But the guys want to get in and get out, right? So they're pouring really fast. Okay.
Yep, 350 gallons a minute.
Ouch. Okay. So Warren, we have 5 different fuels I've listed. I'd like to go down through them one at a time and just tell me what changes you may or may not have noticed in your world. So conventional diesel, petroleum-based diesel, still around? You see it every day?
Yeah, we still see a lot of that. Petroleum diesel for long-term storage facilities, emergency power, hospitals, data centers. That's really the market that they prefer to have is old school petroleum-based diesel fuel. It's more stable. It doesn't hold on to the water like some of the biodiesel products. The biggest change in the conventional diesel has been the reduction in sulfur, which has, in theory, promoted more microbial growth, and that's one of the ways where you start seeing some water kind of crossing over into other problems that we deal with.
Okay. Since Warren's from Michigan, it's an agricultural state. Florida is an agricultural state where I'm at. And we have biodiesel in northern Florida in the Panhandle, and they get their stuff from Georgia. And I have some very nasty sludge pictures. So are you seeing any sludge in biodiesel in Michigan up in the upper Midwest?
Yeah, we see a lot of problems with the biodiesel up here. More so in Indiana. I'm not sure what's going on in central Indiana. Okay. But we've had a lot of problems with biodiesel over the years down in central Indiana and North Carolina, actually.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's a new product on the market called, I think I'm pronouncing it right, NIST, but they use chicken fat and grease from Kentucky Fried Chicken and all this kind of stuff, and they hydrotreat it and they run through all these processes, and it's called renewable diesel. And I've actually been to a couple places and I've heard a lot of good things about it. It's expensive, it's pricey, but it still holds water. Okay, so
right. These are the guys that used to go around collecting the oil from the fast food restaurants and processing it in the garage for free fuel. It's now become a renewable diesel and a profit center for these places to get rid of their waste oils.
Gotcha. And so then we have, particularly in Florida and in Georgia, we have seasonal diesel. So they change the diesel depending on the temperature. Can you share any comments on that? Do you see changes in the time of year and the quality of the fuel?
So not so much in quality of the fuel. The big difference in the seasonal diesel is the percentage of number 1 versus number 2 diesel.
Okay.
And so we don't see a direct relationship necessarily to that as we do as if it's a 5% or 10% biodiesel as opposed to a winter blend or a summer blend.
Okay, gotcha. And then, as you know, Warren, shipping is expensive. The cost of fuel today, I just looked out the window, it's $5.69 for diesel, $4.49 for gas here. But different parts of the country get different components to the diesel, right? Can you talk anything about palm oil or soybean oil or corn oil? Have you noticed any differences with the different ingredients, I guess?
I have not noticed, from my experience, a overall difference in the biodiesel depending on the feedstock. I know there is some a lot of times related to the processing end of it, and how much glycerin gets passed. So I know that I believe it's the palm oils and some of the soys we'll see some higher glycerin counts versus a corn oil and that. And honestly, I don't know any experience with the algae based stuff yet, but
Yeah,
I understand that's got fewer issues than some of the other biosources.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay. So when we have all this changes in fuel, we've got more water held into the fuel column. Let me tell you briefly about some of the changes it caused in the tanks. One is corrosion right here on the left. That's how I got my start. I was in the tugboat business. The guy told me he had a hole in his diesel tank from corrosion, okay, from the acid buildup. Two is we see a lot more fuel injectors, blown tips, right? Blown fuel pumps, because the water is abrasive. The water causes wear patterns, and the water gets really hot and can actually blow. So I'll have another slide on fuel injectors in a minute. Third, down here on the bottom, we see a lot more sludge. More water, more sludge. And fourth, we definitely see a lot more corrosion on the top of the tank. It's Steel Camel's business is one of our businesses preventing this and fixing that. And that problem has not gone away. And that's only a problem from about 2009 on. So it's only about 13 years old. Back in the old days, they never had that. Any comments on blown fuel injectors, Warren? You see them from time to time?
Oh yeah, the data center world, you're always hearing you get Cat or Cummins in changing out injectors on an engine or replacing the whole top end. That's that common rail injecting system. And when you're at 60,000 psi, trying to inject fuel at 1 micron droplet size, a little bit of water goes a long way and gumming that works up for you.
Gotcha. Thank you, Warren. So a couple other changes, and then we'll get to the testing. There's a lot more tank cleaning today, so keep on the lookout for if you're having excessive tank cleaning. Okay, both proactive and reactive, but there's a lot of people are just accepting they got to get their tanks cleaned once a year and pull the sludge out, and then the problem comes back in 7-8 months. Okay, there's just more reasons to test your fuel if you're paying for a lot of tank cleaning. Okay, so really quickly, water gets in. So how do we know water's getting in? If you see this guy, if you see any pump out tanks, which is really popular in Florida, by the way, because we have so much rain getting in the tank. Notice this little puddle right here on the right-hand side. So when it rains really hard, the parking lots puddle up and the lids can't handle it. In another webinar, another seminar, we'll talk about how to prevent that from happening. Second, if you run into contractors, some of my best customers are contractors. I love them to death, but they're pumping out water all the time. So if you ever see these trucks around where they're pumping out 30 gallons, 50 gallons, 80 gallons, right? That's a reason why you need to test for fuel, because you don't want to get that up to 100 gallons, all right? Another warning sign that you got water that you need to test for diesel. If you see this guy over here, I took this picture in Boston, and it's actually hazardous waste guy picking up water, and hazardous water that gets in sumps and spillbacks in the bottom of the tank, and they just put it in these drums, and this guy comes by and picks it up. Very expensive, particularly for roll stores. Some quick statistics. I Googled fuel injector repair 16 miles or 20 miles from downtown Los Angeles. Holy crap. Okay. 16 places listed in Google search that actually do fuel injector repair within 20 miles. That's pretty high if you ask me. What do you think, Warren?
Well, there's a lot of big trucks running out there. I mean, there's a lot of engines to be worked on and a lot of fuel issues to
Right.
be remedying.
But fuel is supposed to be a lubricant. Okay, not it's supposed to be a lubricant.
Well, as you take sulfur out and everything else, the lubricity definitely goes down. That's
Yes, but but also the water increases and causes the problem. Okay.
Yep. Get back to that high pressure common rail fuel system. It's a money maker for the repair shops.
There you go. Couple other quick statistics. In California, 608 random diesel tanks tested at truck stops and gas stations. 52 had violations for excess water. That's really high, 7%. In my old state of Florida, we had a study done in 2020, I believe, and holy smokes, 4%. So 43 out of 1,300, we had 48 violations, right? There's about 4% of all the diesel tanks tested by the state had excess water in there. So that's why we need to do it yourself testing. All right, how else does water get in the tanks? We have whole seminars on prevention, but real quickly, we get leaks in pipes, bad. We also have leaks in sumps past the manway, right? So you can see the bolts are rusted. There's a lot of rust and corrosion in there. Some guy tried to tape it up to prevent all the rust from happening. What big mistake, okay? Because now he's trapping in the moisture in the inside between the tape and the pipe, and the moisture is going right into the tank. Bad. This is compliments of Warren. Warren, can you talk about this picture really quick?
So this is above ground tank. This is an access manway that my guess is there was a previous fuel maintenance contractor probably out there doing some work, had the manway off and damaged the gasket and just put the lid back on with the gasket missing in part of it. There's a nice gap, about a quarter of the manway gasket was missing, with a nice gap around there. That tank was collecting about 3 inches of water every year.
Ouch. That's a lot of water. And that water, a little bit goes a long way.
Goes a long way.
Yeah. And since I'm in the anti-seize business, I see no anti-seize or corrosion inhibitor on those bolts. Bad. Okay. So Warren talked a little about the fuel doesn't settle out. It gets condensation buildup in the tanks. It gets in the pipelines. It gets in the delivery trucks. You have an empty truck full of hot air. You put cold fuel in there, just like stepping out of the shower, you get condensation buildup. So we do get water in our delivery system. We do get water from delivery drivers. It's very tough to control delivery drivers. I know they're nice people, but they get paid to deliver, and they're doing what, Warren, 300 gallons a minute, right?
Yeah, drop on a 4-inch hose is 350 gallons a minute.
Ouch. And if it's raining outside, who cares, right? Get her done, right?
Gotta get it done. Yep.
Gotta get it done. And so water does creep in through the spill buckets. And again, at a later date, we could talk about spill buckets. Okay, there's my picture. Spill buckets and sumps collect water, and that eventually gets into the tank. All right, let's talk what we want to talk about, diesel fuel testing and standards. Warren, tell us about this picture right here.
So this is one of our customers. We do annual maintenance for us, a hospital, University of Michigan. And the bottom of the tank, every year, a little bit of water. You can see that's it represents just over a quarter of an inch of water. I think we pulled 3 gallons of water out of a 50, or that's a 30,000 gallon. So we pulled 3 gallons of water out of a 30,000 gallon underground tank. We do this every year. We get less every year because every year we go through, check caps, lids, try and fix as we go.
Yeah,
but what
so
we're looking at there on the left is water and a little bit of fuel sitting on top. And the dark color is, just aging and sediment. We when we remove this water, we actually do go through very few filters. We've got these tanks where it's just a little bit of water. It's accumulating over time. from vapor space, the top of the tanks. And so in the field, we do a visual analysis per the ASTM standard. That's what the gradient lines tell you.
Okay.
You're judging clarity per ASTM. And then, after that, the after samples will go to the lab for actual particulate and flash point and microbial growth to confirm that the fuel's good.
Good. So the bottom line of this picture is the fuel, even though Warren cleaned it, it gets dirty by just sitting there, right?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's review where this water collects in the tank. I changed this slide around a little bit. So we have water that collects on the top above the fuel line. We call it atmospheric. Some people call it condensation. So if you open up the bottom of a sump lid or open up the bottom of a tank, you'll see rain droplets on the top. Warren, can you talk a little bit about the water at the very top of the tank?
Yeah, so the water in the top of your tanks are open to the atmosphere. So everything that's outside the tank vent is going to end up inside the tank through aspiration. The process of the fuel, expanding and contracting with temperature, with water table, any number of things can cause the tank to aspirate. And then as you're using the fuel, drawing it down, you draw the air into the tank. That moisture, especially in an underground storage tank, that average temperature is going to be in the mid 50s. You suck air out of a 90-degree, 100% humidity into a tank at 54 degrees. All that moisture is just going to end up in that top space.
So so then eventually number 2 happens. It kind of starts falling into the fuel column, but it's just not quite heavy enough to fall down. That's why we have cloudy fuel.
Yep.
And then Warren, tell us about number 3, right? What do you see on the bottom? Tell us what you find, typically what you go out there. Do you see most of it on the bottom?
Well, you'll start to see when you take a bottom sample, you'll see some of the cloudier fuel setting on top of free water. And everything that's bad for your fuel is heavier than your fuel.
Oh,
so,
gotcha.
so all the particulate, all the water starts, just starts collecting, getting, denser water collection, higher percent concentration, and just keeps settling, working its way down to the bottom of the tank.
Gotcha.
And that's why you want to look at the bottom of your tank when you're pulling your samples, trying to evaluate, because it's just going to sit there.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So we're moving along a little bit, Warren, and I want to talk to you about 5 or 6 ways, actually, how you can detect water, how you gather samples, how you can do your own internal fuel testing and do your own quality checks before you send them to the lab. So I have 3 ways right here. So on the left, I have a little filtering machine. You put contaminated fuel in this housing, if you will, and run it through this little pump, run it through a little filter, and then over here in the middle, you would see the results, cloudy and clean. That's one way to test your fuel. 2, we could just do visual observation. And 3, some people like to do chemicals. So on the right, we'll talk about it a little later, is a little test. You can put a couple of droplets of this powder in there, and if it turns pink, it's bad. Okay, so let's review some of these tests. First, we need to gather samples of the fuel. Warren, would you please talk about using this baler? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it?
So every method of sampling has its pros and cons. The baler is nice because it gives you a nice cross section of the fuel as it passes through. But as you see, the baler has the tip of it that doesn't allow it to quite get to the bottom of the tank.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
you miss free water when you use the traditional baler style, but you get to see this really nice cross section of what the bottom of your tank looks like.
Okay. Cool.
We use a bacon bomb.
Bacon bomb's right there. I'll go to the bacon bomb right now.
I like the bacon bomb because as it passes through the fuel column, it's not collecting anything until you hit the bottom and you pop the popper up, and that actually creates a bit of a vacuum. So even though you're not right at the bottom of the tank necessarily, you got that vacuum. So it's going to pull up the sediment and stuff that's actually on the bottom. That's why I personally prefer a bomb sampler.
Okay, like this one.
Like that one, yep. And then the other common one would be a vacuum pump.
Okay.
Drop a hose down and use a vacuum pump.
Okay, cool. Okay, so thank you on that. And then you pick up your samples, and then we could observe, and we could look, and we could do our little internal more testing and see what we got. Hopefully it's bright and clear, but you never know, you're going to get some nasty stuff in it, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Another way to detect fuel and gather fuel is to take fuel out of the nozzle and do your own visual test. And there's rules, and different states have different rules. They all kind of belong to this guy up here, National Institute of Standards, NIST130, but every state has its own variation. And they have what's called a clear and bright visual test. Warren, if you could talk a little bit about your experience with clear and bright visual tests.
So clear and bright as a test method is a good just a first assessment.
Okay.
It's not going to give you a percentage of water.
Okay.
You know, you can have fuel that's very clear and have I don't know, 110 to 200 ppm water in it. You can have some fuel that is kind of cloudy and hazy, like the sample on the right.
Yeah.
But it actually will come back at less than 50 ppm water.
Wow.
No sediment. It's so it can be deceiving. It's a nice first blush assessment, but it's certainly not where you want to. You want to hang your hat on your visual analysis.
But in generalities, clearer and brighter is better than cloudier and darker.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially if you're in the retail fuel world.
Okay.
Cloudy in new fuel is more of an issue than cloudy in older fuel because you don't know what's happened over time.
Gotcha. Oh, cloudy new fuel. That's not good. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so cloudy new fuel is a problem. Cloudy old fuel may or may not be a problem.
Okay, and that's me, by the way.
What market you're in when you're looking at these things.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and there's a problem, with the states. Not everybody has perfect vision. I certainly don't. And so there's some discrepancies on the human eye. Okay, so it can be inaccurate, and it could also, depending on where you get your sample, you could actually be leaving water in the tank and you don't even know it. Okay, so back to this retail side, NIST 130, they say on the diesel, they say no more than 1 inch in depth to 4.2. Water shall not exceed 1 inch depth when measuring with water indicating paste or any acceptable means utilized in the storage of diesel. Let's talk about that on the backside here, Warren. What do you like about the paste and what don't you like about the paste?
I don't like anything about the paste personally, but it is accurate is in identifying if you've got 1 inch of water, the paste is going to be accurate in telling you you've got, somewhere close to 1 inch of water in the tank. Take away the end of the condition of the stick and the strike plate on the bottom of the tank that you're measuring against. But I mean, it does indicate water versus fuel. Oftentimes I see people not leave the stick in they put the stick in and then pull it out. They don't leave it in contact long enough for the
okay, gotcha.
For it to react. So you see some false negatives.
Okay, gotcha. Let's talk about this picture then. I live in Florida. As you know, 150 years ago, we were Indians in swamps. That was it. Okay. And so some of the tanks settle in Florida. And I was wondering, Warren, if you could talk about your experience when the tank is not perfectly level.
And settling tanks is pretty common everywhere. And there are some installation contractors and customers that prefer to have some tilt to their tank.
Okay.
But the problem with tilt to the tank is if you don't know the low side and represent where your level probe is, you're not going to know how accurate your water is. You know, especially if you got a tank that's blind ended and you don't have access down there, you could have, you know, 3/4 inch of water on one end of your tank, and it doesn't show up any water on the high side of your tank.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So-
Okay, cool. So it's inaccurate. And so you could be getting false readings, and you could keep on using your fuel tank, but you don't realize you have water in one end. You might not realize you have sludge building down at one end, and you might not realize you have corrosion down building at one end because the tank is settled unevenly.
Yeah, we actually had a tank. The submersible turbine pump was on the low end of the tank, and the level gauge was at the high end of the tank. And they kept complaining about water coming up, plugging filters, and the only access you had into the tank was on the high side, so you never could see the water.
Gotcha.
So you
Gotcha.
ran a tube all the way down the bottom and sucked it out.
Pain in the ass. Pain in the ass. Right. Okay. So which leads me to my next subject. I deal with a lot of contractors. My background is in accident prevention. That's how I kind of got in this business with the corrosion side. I got involved in this tugboat, and lo and behold, they had a hole in their tank, right? And now some of these gas stations, or most of them, have automatic tank gauges, but the corrosion problem has not gone away. Okay. So Warren, please tell me your experience or comments on suspended water in particular, and gauges that look like the one up on the right, or like this, that have issues with it. So take it away, Warren. Tell me a little bit about the pros and cons of the electronic gauge.
So electronic tank gauges are absolutely fantastic pieces of equipment.
Okay.
However, like everything, they need to be maintained. You need to have pull the probes out. You know, a probe that is designed sensitively enough to float on diesel, and then have another probe that will float on water, but still be heavier than diesel. It doesn't take a whole lot for that to be set off balance by debris, or in the case of the one picture here, actually water that is accumulating on the float that is traveling down the rod, the magnetometric probe from a leaking cap.
Okay.
So there's inaccuracies in a poorly maintained system. Plus, if you look at the shape of your water float, it's a flat bottom.
Okay,
the bottom of
gotcha.
your tank isn't flat. It
Gotcha.
can hang up on the edges of the curve of the tank.
So again, you could get slightly inaccurate measurements, and you're not aware they got water building up in your tank.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Okay. Another thing that I've kind of pride myself on is to look at the conditions of the filter, and also ask, why are they, particularly in the gas station market, why are they using so many filters, right? And why are they using so many different types of filters? Okay. And a lot has to do with customer complaints, whether it's slow diesel, and they hate that some customers want to know about the slow diesel. Other people say, screw it, just pump the fuel and get the customers off my back. I got to keep the store open. So you'll see some people using particulate filters on diesel all the time, just so they can keep the flow and the filters don't plug up. Other people want it to plug up so they know they have a problem, and it's difficult. So I'd like to talk to you briefly about inspecting the filters. And I use this thing right here called a long acre. They're about $100 on Amazon. And you cut open the filter and you look at conditions. And we're inspecting for water. We're inspecting for fuel quality. And over on the left here is coffee grinds or rust chips. I've seen them as big as your fingernail, Warren.
Yep.
And this one came from a government facility. And then on the right, we have dirt. Well, how's that dirt getting in the filter, right? Where did it come from? How did it get in there? Well, if dirt can get in, water can get in. So one way to keep up on your fuel maintenance is to constantly check your fuel and also check your filter. And this is good old Iowa sludge. Warren, why do we have so much sludge in Iowa? Again.
Well, Iowa loves corn, they grow a lot of it, and they love making diesel fuel and ethanol out of it. And the biofuels just hold moisture.
Yep.
Suspended moisture allows microbial growth, which allows the development of slime layers like this over top of, the filters, the pumps.
Yeah.
Every place that it can go, you'll see this lovely lovely bit of slime growth.
And that's a nice picture too. I got some really nasty ones on some other slides. Okay.
That filter looked like it was only about half used.
Yeah. So, and that's a kind of weird. It's a particulate filter as well, in diesel applications. So it throws me off. Why are they doing that? Okay. Particularly when they got sludge, because they want the fuel to pass. Okay. Another people, if you're really into inspecting your fuel and you want to do it quick and you want to know if we have water, I'm going to run through some quick tests. So this is sold through Steel Camel or our friend Dieselcraft. It's about $10 per test. And in 30 seconds, you put a couple pebbles, get a couple fuel samples, you put a couple pebbles of chemistry in this thing, and in about 30 seconds, it will turn pink. If you have pink, you failed your test. You have more water than it's allowed. Okay, so that's one way. Two, we do diesel fuel absorption tests. Steel Camel sells these little socks for a few bucks, and they absorb water. So if you want to see if you got water in there and you want to see if you can get it out, you can put these little socks in there. They're called camel tails. They're a couple bucks each. Put them in there, you shake it. Within 3 or 4 days, you shake it once or twice a day. Within 3 or 4 days, any suspended water will suck into that sock and it won't be able to get back out. And like you'll see on the left, it'll be clear. Okay, and that's kind of popular these days. People want to have a handle on their fuel and see if water's building up. And we actually have now, for the big generators, we actually have a 6-foot sock that is 3 inches wide called triple gonzo. So it's a good way to test and see if water's building up in your tank. Okay, another way to test fuel for water is to run it through a little filtering machine. And this is ours, Steel Camel. It's about 300 bucks. It's got a little pump. It's got a little motor. It's got a little holding tank. It's got a bunch of valves, and you run your fuel through here for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And then you flip a switch and it runs through the filter. And this is on the right, you can see how it started. On the right, you can see it was cloudy. It's kind of got a weird hue in there because we've had sludge in our tank here lately. And then after about 10 minutes or so, maybe 12 minutes, you check for another sample, and lo and behold, you got clean fuel. So A, you know you have water, and B, you know if you can get it out. And B, you can also find out if you need to avoid tank cleaning. So if you get out this little filtering machine, you get out with our machine, you don't have to pay for tank cleaning. And if you keep your fuel clean and dry, you'll have less problems. And this takes, again, about 15 minutes. Okay. And one filter will do probably 10 tests, right? Maybe 12 tests. So it's about $3 to $4 a test. And that's what it looks like on the right and on the left. We really like it, and a lot of people use it. Okay. So in summary, Warren, what do you think about this statement?
Absolutely. I mean, it's if you don't know what the issue is, you're waiting for somebody to complain. You're waiting for failure. Fixing something after it's failed is so much more expensive.
Yes.
You get people standing over you, looking at you, anxiously waiting for the problem to be resolved.
Yeah, right.
If you get ahead of it, get proactive.
Yeah.
If you're looking at it, you're pulling your samples, you know what's happening.
Yeah.
Even if you have to do, tank cleaning, you do it as a preventative maintenance measure at a fraction of the cost of actually having to have a tank cleaning.
Yes.
And that's pretty much how we push as well, is get ahead of it, stay ahead of it. And the long-term costs go down substantially.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter if it's trucking, some guy going over a mountain pass, right? Check your fuel before you go.
Yeah,
I'm in Florida, so I have customers in Miami that do a lot of sailing, to the Bahamas and back. Guess what? They test their fuel, and you get, for a lack of a better word, crappy fuel in the Bahamas. Okay.
yep.
So they test for water and they buy our socks, and they constantly see if water's building up. Okay. And let's talk real briefly, Warren, about the emergency generator market, right? Are your customers doing their own little testing every 3 or 4 months? What are they doing?
So it depends on the customer. Some of the bigger data centers, they're doing, they're looking, either, quarterly or semi-annually. They'll look at the bottom of their tanks. The hospitals, it's usually just once a year.
Okay.
And that's to stay in compliance with their JACO, JACO compliance with the emergency backup work. And, and there are some out there that truly don't do anything until there's a problem.
So there's a problem. Yeah. So we have a
big social media guys. They go through ebbs and flows. They'll lose a half a data center for a couple hours due to a fuel problem. So they'll go gung ho for a couple years, and they say, "Boy, this is costing us a lot." So then they back off, and it's just a cycle.
Gotcha. Thank you. So thank you. If you have any questions for myself, djenkins@steelcamel.com, or Warren, ecofuelservices@gmail.com. We're here to help you. We thank you for paying attention to this, and we're just really glad to help people solve problems of water and fuel and how to test. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon.